What if the greatest threat to men was never the outside world, but the silent war inside their own minds? Freud left behind a warning that men of every generation continue to overlook, a warning that pleasure without purpose, repression without awareness, and instinct without transformation will break us down from within. This isn't about dusty psychology books or theories locked in classrooms. It's about the very choices you make each day, the habits you cling to, and the battles you avoid. Stay with me, because this warning might be the mirror you've been afraid to look into. Wisdom grows when shared. Hit subscribe, share your view in the comments, and let's sharpen each other's minds. Sigmund Freud, often called the father of psychoanalysis, didn't just analyze dreams or write about unconscious desires. He left behind a map of the human soul, especially for men. His words, though controversial and at times uncomfortable, were not designed to flatter but to awaken. And yet, for over a century, generations of men have shrugged off his warning, distracted by the noise of modern life, seduced by comfort, and numbed by endless escapes. But if you strip away the theories and the academic debates, Freud's message becomes startlingly clear. Men who refuse to confront their inner world will be ruled by it. Freud believed that men are driven by powerful instincts, sexual desire, aggression, ambition, forces that can either build empires or destroy them from within. He warned that repressing these instincts blindly, pretending they don't exist, doesn't make them disappear. Instead, they resurface in destructive patterns, addictions, broken relationships, hollow successes that feel meaningless at the top. And what did most men do with this warning? They ignored it. They thought they were too strong to be vulnerable, too busy to reflect, too proud to admit that their struggles were not with society, but with themselves. The modern man is living proof of this neglect. We drown in distractions, scrolling endlessly, chasing validation, consuming more than creating, yet wonder why emptiness persists. Freud anticipated this. He knew that without self-awareness, men would chase pleasure as if it were purpose, repress pain until it became rage, and seek power without ever achieving peace. He wasn't condemning men for their instincts. He was urging them to transform those instincts into something higher, something that elevates not just themselves, but everyone around them. So why does this matter now? Now, because every generation repeats the same cycle of ignoring the inner war until it consumes them. And yet, those who dare to face it, who turn raw desire into discipline, who turn frustration into creation, become the leaders, the builders, the men others follow. Freud's warning wasn't just psychological theory. It was a challenge, a call, a mirror. And the question we must ask ourselves is, will we continue ignoring it or finally step into the manhood he knew was possible? Freud's first great warning to men was simple yet profound. Unchecked desires will destroy you if you do not understand and master them. He believed that every man is pulled by invisible strings of instinct, sexual energy, hunger for recognition, need for control, drive for pleasure. These are not weaknesses in themselves. They are raw fuel. But like fire, if left untended, they burn out of control. What begins as harmless indulgence can, over time, become dependency. Dependency soon hardens into chains, and those chains, once formed, choke a man's will, his ambition, and ultimately his very sense of self. Freud saw that most men confuse freedom with indulgence. They think that giving in to every desire means they are living fully, but in truth, the opposite happens. The man who cannot say no is never free. He is enslaved by the very things he pursues. Pleasure without purpose weakens him. The man who seeks escape in lust, in substances, in endless distraction, feels powerful in the moment, but emptier when the high fades. The more he runs from facing himself, the deeper the void inside him grows. This was Freud's warning. The instinct you ignore or overfeed will one day control you. Consider how this plays out in modern life. A man may spend years chasing casual pleasures, mistaking lust for love or comfort for happiness. At first it feels like he's winning, living without rules, without restraint. But slowly his energy fades, his focus scatters. He no longer creates, he only consumes. His relationships become shallow, his goals blur, and his spirit dulls. By the time he realizes he is trapped, the chains are already tight. Freud knew this cycle well. He saw it in his patients and in the society around him. Yet here we are, generations later, still ignoring the same trap. The tragedy is not that men have desires. Freud never condemned desire itself. He understood that these drives carry the potential for greatness. The problem is when men let those drives consume them instead of transforming them. A man's sexual energy can be channeled into building a legacy, his ambition into leadership, his hunger into creation. But without awareness, without discipline, he wastes it all on fleeting pleasures that leave nothing behind. Freud's message was not moralistic, it was psychological survival. He was telling men, master your inner fire or it will master you. When men ignore this truth, the results are predictable. Addictions rise, purpose fades, weakness masquerades as confidence. How many men today scroll endlessly through screens, consume shallow entertainment, or seek validation in empty encounters, thinking they are free? But beneath the surface, they are restless, anxious, and unfulfilled. They are prisoners of their unchecked instincts, living a life of reaction rather than direction. This is exactly what Freud foresaw. Men who trade strength for comfort, clarity for distraction, and freedom for slavery to desire. Yet here lies the hope. Freud did not simply warn, he pointed toward transformation. If unchecked desires can destroy a man, then mastered desires can forge one. When a man learns to delay gratification, when he turns his hunger for pleasure into a hunger for growth, when he channels his raw instinct into building something greater than himself, he steps into a power that no external force can take from him. He becomes free not by indulging, but by mastering. And this mastery is not about repression, about pretending the desires don't exist. It is about understanding them, confronting them, and consciously choosing where to direct them. The man who does this does not live in chains. He lives with clarity, with strength, with unshakable purpose. Tudor. Freud's first warning was a mirror, and only those brave enough to look into it, to face the truth of their desires, can step into the kind of manhood the next generation desperately needs. Have you ever had a conversation where the words made sense, yet somehow didn't, where she said, "I'm fine," but the silence afterwards screamed the opposite? Schopenhauer, the often controversial philosopher, saw this not as dishonesty, but as a reflection of human, and especially female, psychology. Words are rarely raw facts. They are vessels for emotions, desires, and subtle power plays. If you've ever wondered why women sometimes say the opposite of what they feel, or why their truest messages seem hidden between the lines, then you're about to discover a psychological lens that could change the way you listen forever. Wisdom grows when shared. Hit subscribe, share your view in the comments, and let's sharpen each other's minds. In the vast theater of human communication, words are only the surface of the script. Beneath them flows an undercurrent of emotion, history, and intention, one that Schopenhauer believed was often more important than the literal meaning. When it comes to women, he argued, this undercurrent is not merely a subtle addition to the message, it is the message. Consider the phrase, "I'm fine." In purely linguistic terms, it's a statement of well-being, but in the relational reality of life, it can mean anything from "I'm upset." But I don't want to fight to "I need you to notice that something is wrong" without me having to say it. Schopenhauer's insight was not about labeling women as deceptive, but about recognizing the unique interplay between emotion and language in the feminine psyche. Why is this so? Psychology gives us clues. Women, across cultures and history, have often relied less on brute force and more on subtlety, influence, and emotional intelligence to navigate social structures. Words for them became instruments not only of expression but of adaptation. Direct confrontation was not always the safest or most effective path. Instead, nuance, suggestion, and implication became essential survival skills. Schopenhauer's critics accused him of cynicism, but in truth, his view can be transformed into a practical guide for deeper connection. If you expect every word to be literal, you risk missing the soul of the conversation. If, however, you understand that meaning often lives in tone, pauses, and what is left unsaid, you begin to communicate on a higher frequency. one where trust and empathy flourish. This isn't about playing games. It's about understanding that human beings, especially women, are not just logical creatures. They are emotional storytellers, often weaving truth through layers of metaphor and implication. A wise listener doesn't just hear, they interpret, feel, and respond to the real message. And perhaps, just perhaps, when you learn to listen this way, you will discover that the heart's language was never meant to be read word for word. It was meant to be felt. When we think of language, most of us picture it as a neutral tool, a way to transfer information from one mind to another. If I say the meeting starts at 5, you receive a precise fact. But Schopenhauer, and many modern psychologists after him, observed that for women, communication often serves a broader and deeper function. It's not only about exchanging data, it's about shaping an emotional atmosphere, building or testing trust, and creating a sense of connection. This means that when a woman speaks, the literal words might be only the tip of the iceberg. Below the surface is a submerged emotional context that drives her choice of words, tone, and timing. She may be telling you about her day, but what she is really sharing is her feeling about her day. She might be recounting an event, but beneath the details is a desire to be heard, validated, or understood. Schopenhauer believed this tendency was rooted not in manipulation, but in the different evolutionary pressures faced by men and women. Across history, women often operated in environments where social harmony and emotional intelligence were survival skills. A direct, blunt exchange of facts might work in a marketplace negotiation, but in the complex web of relationships, diplomacy and subtlety often proved far more effective. Over time, this shaped a style of communication where the way something is said carries as much weight as what is said. For example, when a woman says, "You never spend time with me anymore," the literal claim might not even be factually accurate. You may have spent hours together yesterday, but the sentence is not a statistic. It's a coded emotional signal. It means I feel emotionally distant from you right now, or I miss the closeness we used to have. If you respond only to the literal content, "That's not true, we went out last night," you're not addressing the real message. You're playing on the wrong level of the game. This is why some men feel constantly misunderstood or blindsided in relationships. They've been trained to take words at face value, like reading a technical manual. But in the realm of emotional connection, the literal meaning is only part of the equation, and sometimes the least important part. Psychologists call this meta-communication, the message about the message. It's the emotional layer embedded in tone, body language, and word choice. Women, in general, are more attuned to this layer, both in sending and receiving it. For them, language can be a bridge, a shield, a test, or an embrace. Schopenhauer's insight wasn't meant to accuse women of dishonesty. Rather, it was to warn men that if they ignore the emotional intent, they risk missing the entire point of the conversation. The woman may leave feeling unheard, not because you didn't respond, but because you responded to the wrong thing. Once you understand this, the shift in perspective can be life-changing. Instead of reacting to the words alone, you start asking yourself, what emotion is she really expressing? What does she need from me in this moment? Solutions, reassurance, or simply presence? Is the conversation about facts or about feelings? When you answer those questions, you stop seeing conversations as debates to be won and start seeing them as moments to connect. You stop demanding precision in language and start seeking precision in understanding. In short, women's words often operate like poetry. They are not meant to be dissected for literal meaning alone. They are meant to be felt. And once you learn to feel them, you will hear truths that no direct statement could ever convey.